What's up, guys? It's Kara Corey here for another episode of Dietitian Talk. And for today's talk, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the bodybuilding world and competing. I think it's really trendy right now. I mentioned in one of my last vlogs, I think a lot of people are jumping into competitions, and that's okay, but I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand what they're getting themselves into and what some of the ramifications can be. And I'm speaking in terms of physically and mentally and even financially. So I wanted to just give some opinions on each of those areas to hopefully help some people who are considering going into the world of bodybuilding. I find it really interesting that a lot of times when people know I compete, especially at the gym and in a gym environment, people often say, well, I was thinking about competing, and it always floors me because so many people say that they think about competing. And I'm a competitor, but I still don't understand why, in a way, because I think a lot of people feel like they have to compete, if that makes any sense. I think people lose weight and attain certain weight loss goals, and they're like, well, what's next? And I think it's a great what's next to go into the bodybuilding world if that's truly what you're passionate about. But I think a lot of people go into it feeling like they have to do it because that's the next step, or because their coach told them so, or maybe the people at the gym are urging them to. Maybe they're seeing a lot of it. You see a lot of it on social media, Instagram, YouTubers, all that kind of stuff. And I just really think it's important that people aren't persuaded by what they're seeing others do and what's trendy right now. And that can be a very difficult thing. Clearly, I'm biased because I do enjoy competing and I love it. And it's something I started doing in 2011, much early on into the world of the bikini division. It was very new and it wasn't so trendy yet. And now it is. And you just have to be aware of what you're getting yourself into. And I think the first thing I would suggest doing is to write out, and like old school, write it down or maybe type it on the computer, but think about your reasons for wanting to compete and what that means to you, and have a clear purpose of why it's important for you to step on stage, why you want to get on stage, and why you want to compete. And I think it really has to be more than a physical driven purpose, because shit is going to get tough during prep. So things are going to get so hard that even for someone like myself who's done it multiple times, I sit there at mid-prep and I'm like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, why am I doing this? Why? And it helps to have a coach say, okay, why do you want to do this? What is your purpose again? And then you're like, oh yeah, and you can think about all those reasons why you really want to be out there. And that helps drive you to push through those times within prep that are going to be so challenging and almost feel defeating to you as a person. You need to have a solid purpose there in order to be able to push through and do it. And not saying if you don't have those things, you can't compete. I'm sure there's plenty of people that do it because someone else told them to do it and they want to compete and they just go out there and do it. But then you are just kind of going through the motions of it and you're not really putting your full self into it. And I really think with bodybuilding, I really don't recommend you do it unless you are going to put 100% of yourself into it. It is a very financially expensive sport to be in. It's extremely expensive regardless of what division you're competing in. You're going to find yourself paying for all different kinds of things, and I believe I did do a video on this discussing the different costs associated with competing. But just in a nutshell, you're going to be paying for your suit, your entry fee, the organization, maybe you're traveling, so you're paying for the travel, the hotel, you're paying for a coach, you're paying for tanning, you're paying for training sessions. The list goes on and on. It can be very financially a financial burden, basically. And even if you're married and your significant other doesn't get it, they may not support why you're doing it. So keep that in mind in terms of the finances. Number one, you need to have that purpose for why you want to do it, and make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Number two, you need to financially make sure you can afford it, okay? Because it is very expensive. I've seen people go into debt for these competitions. I've ran up my credit card before doing these competitions. I've seen people do GoFundMe account things or whatever, which I think's dumb. Like, if you can't afford it, don't beg other people for money to do this kind of stuff. It's a very selfish sport, and I find that to be very selfish. I'm just gonna say that. The other thing is, too, you need to make sure you're in a point in your life that it makes sense to compete. And I think this is something a lot of people don't consider. Think about the time it's going to take you to train for the competition and when the competition is going to fall. Are you setting yourself up for failure? Because be prepared. You have to make sacrifices in this sport, or else you're going to be left feeling probably mad at yourself when you step on the stage that day. But be prepared. Are you signing yourself up for a show at the end of August when all summer long you have best friends' weddings, you have bridal showers to go to, you have baby showers to go to, barbecues, all these things? Are you prepared to either A, say no to those things and those events, turn down the food, or are you prepared to make those things work within your lifestyle and within what your coach's guidance is for how you're going to train and prep for that show? Because the reality is, most oftentimes we have to say no to those things. Or you either have to bring your Tupperwares, or, once it gets real close to showtime, most coaches don't want you to just be guesstimating macros. They want you to be on a fine science with it. Even if you are doing flexible dieting, it gets tough. So you have to be prepared for that. You have to be prepared and okay for the restriction, because it's going to be restrictive. It's not going to be all rainbows and ponies when you're 4 weeks out from a show and you want to be around your friends and maybe they don't all understand what you're doing. It gets really mentally challenging. That's when you question, why am I doing this? This sucks. That's when feelings of depression and anger can come out while you're competing. You kind of get upset at the process. It can become very emotional and really draining during prep if you're not in a good place in your life to do that. Depending on what else you have going on in your life. Are there things in your career, in your home life? Are you in a good place in your marriage? Because that can take a toll during prep. I've seen people who sign up for shows when they're about to go through a divorce, or they're about to graduate college, or they're about to make a huge career change. In my opinion, that is not a good time to sign up for a bodybuilding show. And I'm not saying neglect your fitness level or your fitness goals, but to me, the amount of time and energy you have to invest into that kind of a sport, and it is a selfish sport, to handle all those other huge life things, it's just not ideal. So really think about, not saying you can always predict when you're going to go through a divorce or have a career change, I get that, but just be mindful and assess where you're at in your life. Are you in a good place where things are pretty stable? In the next 3 to 4 months, you don't have too much going on, or it seems like a good time or a good fit in your life to do that. So that's a big thing I would suggest, and I think a lot of people don't think about that. They just get excited about the idea of competing, or maybe they know someone else competing, so they want to do it, and you don't think about all those other events and life things that come up that make it very challenging. So definitely sit back and assess your life and where you're at right now, and if it's a good time. I know for me personally, I learned a huge lesson. For me, working in a hospital, we have to go through what's called accreditation, where surveyors come in and they basically can shut down the hospital of each department isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, what the hospital gets reimbursed money back for. So for me, being a department head for the nutrition department, that was a very stressful time, and that was a summer I chose to compete, and I lost my shit, and my cortisol levels were through the roof, and my results did not reflect how hard I was working and the things I was doing, because I was so stressed out. And that was a huge learning lesson for me, that I will never compete or put that type of pressure on myself again when I'm going through a survey period, because it just wasn't a good time for me. So that's just one example, but think about what's going on in your life, and if it's going to work, if it's going to be a good time for you to make that fit. Most of you have probably already heard this, but the stage will always be there. And it's true. Bodybuilding shows aren't going anywhere. What's the harm in waiting a little bit until the time is right for you to compete? So don't forget that. Don't feel pressured into needing to compete. Number one, you don't have to. You're no more special if you compete than if you don't compete and you're still a badass in the gym, okay? I think my husband is a prime example of that, shredded Jesus. I mean, look at all those shreds. And the dude doesn't compete. He doesn't need a stage or a date to motivate him. So don't feel pressured to do that. And with that, don't feel pressured if you want to do it within a certain time frame. It doesn't matter how young or old you are. This sport is wonderful because it's for anyone and everyone. Whether you're 18 years old, fresh out of college, or you are a 45-year-old woman who just had twins. You know what I mean? This sport is meant for anyone at any time of your life. So don't feel pressured to have to do it and have to do it right away because it's popular right now in social media. The other thing that I caution about too with deciding if you're ready to sign up for a show is, like I said, the mental aspect of things. It is very mentally challenging, and I've kind of already touched on that a bit. It's not only mentally challenging during the prep, but it can be even more so a struggle post-competition. So for those of you following my vlogs, obviously you know what I'm talking about. I'm going through it a bit myself, but I think some people who've never competed before may not expect that post-show can be even more challenging than the actual prep, because you've got that focus leading up to it. You've got that carrot dangling there for you to stay on your diet and stay focused, and then post-show, it's gone, it's done. And, you don't want to just gain 20 pounds and feel bad about yourself. That's when self-esteem hits an all-time low. That's when we can get depressed. We can feel lost. So post-show is very complicated as well. You still have to pay attention to your diet, and you still have to keep some kind of balance within your life during prep so that post-competition, you don't feel like I have nothing left in my life. What's next for me? So there's this huge mental challenge that I think is even more so. I think that part's more tough than the actual physical component of training and dieting for a competition. I really, really do, and I can't stress that enough. So if mentally you haven't thought about where you're at in your life, make sure that you think about where you're at and that you're in a good place and that you feel like you are strong enough to still be in a good place post-competition. The feelings that people deal with post-competition, the binge eating disorder, the rebound, weight gain, people go through a lot of shit post-competition. So do a little research on it. Talk to some people who've competed before. See what they've done post-show. See what they've gone through. And just be aware of it and make sure that you feel like you're up for that kind of challenge as well. And aside from the mental aspect, in terms of the physical aspect, if you're ready to compete or not, when people reach out to me in coaching emails, I don't mean to be a dick, but I want to see pictures of what you look like right now. If you're emailing me saying you want to compete in a show in 16 weeks, so 4 months, I got to know what you're looking like right now before I say yes. PayPal me that money. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to steer anyone in the wrong direction if they're not in a good place to do it. I'm someone that feels like I maintain an athletic physique for the most part all year round. I by no means maintain stage leanness, but I'm usually within about 10 pounds of what I would be on the stage. And I still require a good 8 to 12 weeks of super hard dieting, super hard training. Don't get me wrong, everyone's totally different. Some people, 4 weeks and they've got it. Others may need longer than that. So it's really important that you understand your body or have some understanding of how quickly you make changes, on what dietary changes you respond best to. And if you don't know those things, you need to work with a coach ahead of time before you even start prepping. You need to work with a coach to figure out what your baseline metabolism is looking like, what you best respond to, whether it's decreasing carbs, decreasing fats, whether you respond better to tons of cardio. There's so many different factors that play into it. You could pick the best coach out there, and it's not going to be a matter of knowing it in a week. It's a trial and error process of figuring it out and learning how you respond. So if you are going to work with a coach, I suggest you reach out to someone in advance and say, hey, this is what I look like right now. Tell me, if I could compete when, what time frame, and, have a realistic mindset about what it's going to take to get there. Because I would not advise someone to, try to work towards going to the stage being completely restricted. Like, sure, you can compete in 8 weeks. We're just going to do no carbs the entire time and we will get you there. If a coach is telling you that, they're just out to get your money. And that's not going to be good for you and your metabolism in the long run. And you really need to think about life after the stage too. So it's really important that you're realistic about what your body's looking like right now and looking at what people look like when they're on stage that day. People are extremely, extremely lean. And like I said, I am a fairly fit person, maybe even more fit than the average person when they see me, even when I'm not in competition prep. So think about that. Think about what you're doing right now with your training and how you look. Start taking progress pictures and see how things are looking. And you do have to somewhat compare it to the people that are stepping on stage in those types of competitions. So you have to be realistic about what it's going to take to get there. Maybe you're not ready to compete at all this year, or maybe you will find out during that process that you're not willing to go to the extreme that it takes to step on stage. And many people realize that too. I feel like the older I get, the more I'm like, man, do I want to do this? Do I want to keep working this hard? You have to work really hard. You have to dedicate a lot of time to it. I understand for people who have kids why they wouldn't want to do it, because my God, I don't know how you'd find the time to do it. So there's so many things you have to think about before you decide, before you sign up for a competition. You really have to think about physically, are you there? Are you even close? Maybe reach out to people, find out where you stand. I don't mind when people send me emails and ask me that question. You don't have to be my client. I'll gladly respond, and I always do, and give you my honest feedback. And I can't stress enough the mental aspect of it. Do a little research on it. If you haven't already, watch some of my vlogs and see how cuckoo crazy I've gone post-competition. It can be very challenging. So think about those things. Think about the finances. Think about where you're at in your life. And those are the best tips I can give you guys before you even think about signing up for a bodybuilding competition. Do your research. There's tons out there. There's tons on tigerfitness.com. There's tons of things on YouTube you guys can look up, which is great right now. You have access to lots of information. When I first started in this sport, there was nothing out there, which was part of why I put this channel together. So don't forget to check out some of my other videos that are helpful for first-time competitors. But I hope you guys found this information helpful. If you know someone who is thinking about competing, please share this video, and hopefully it will help them sort out what they want to do. So please post any questions below. Vote for me in round 4 of the Tiger Fitness People's Choice Awards. Comment below on any other future topics you'd like to see me discuss. Hit the like button and keep checking back for more. Behind me.